Hey, good morning, good afternoon. I don't even know what time it is. I am out here in my garden assessing the damage that has happened over the last couple days. I really hesitated to make this video. I've been kind of going over in my head all the reasons why I shouldn't make this video or reasons that I should make this video. And that's because if you've been watching the last few videos I put out about planting out the cool season garden and all the work that went into that and all the planning, we had a hard freeze come in the day after we had everything in the ground. And I wasn't really, I was aware and not aware it was happening. I got sick and I came home from an event that we were at and I just went to bed. I didn't even check the weather. Had I checked the weather, I probably would have come out and covered some of my plants with a frost cloth. But I didn't, like I said, because I went to bed. The other thing is that even though I've questioned myself over the last few days, I really did do my due diligence as a gardener. I had researched all the plants that I wanted to put out, like ad nauseum, making sure that they could handle the temperatures that I knew might happen in the next week. I've been watching the weather. I knew that the temperatures might dip down to like 32, maybe even a little bit below that, which it did on Thursday night. It got down to 30 degrees for like 1 hour, I think. And everything I had read, it said that the plants I put in the ground would be able to handle that. Now, they wouldn't be able to handle 30 degrees for 4 hours. Up to 4 hours would definitely kill them, but they would be able to handle it. And some of these would be fine down into 28 degrees. So I came out the next day just to kind of walk around, completely unaware that the temperatures had dropped that low. And I walked in my garden and I saw everything that we had planted frozen. And if you've ever been in that situation where in the garden or just in life in general, where you've worked really hard to plan something and then you just watch it just like right before your eyes, completely, all the things that you've worked for, like just go away, die in this case, whatever. We'd already gotten through the flood, I'd already had my first fear of the garden dying. When that flood happened, I was just waiting for everything to just wash away, and then that was it. But we made it through, and thank you, Jesus. We made it through. And then to walk out here and see every single plant affected by this freeze, I didn't even cry. I think I was just so tired and so just kind of over it at that point. I just kind of looked at it and went back inside. And it took a couple days for me to kind of just let all that sink in. And I've come out here every day and just kind of looked, and my cabbages seem to really have pulled through. I mean, they don't look great, but I can tell they're still like the newer growth looks good. The dill surprisingly held out. I've been kind of just waiting to see what's going to happen with the cauliflower and the broccoli. And oh man, you guys, I planted 30 plus plants of broccoli, and I think maybe a handful have pulled through. I can see, yeah, it's discouraging, right? It's just so discouraging. I think maybe 5 or 6 of those broccoli plants will make it. And the cauliflower, they look a little better. But I probably have lost half of the cauliflower plants that I put out here. My chamomile pulled through. My Dara, or Queen Anne's lace, that I planted, man, that stuff was so beautiful. It was big and beautiful, and I don't think it made it. So I can replant that from seed, and that's what I'm going to do. But I had given it such a great head start inside. It's just really disappointing. Also, my mustard greens, which are supposed to really handle that cold weather really well. I planted 50 mustard plants out here, and I can see maybe 5 that made it. So I think you know where I'm going with this. Just really heartbreaking, especially for my kids who are out here working really hard. So I was just kind of like, what do I do? What? I'm kind of an overcomer. I tend to be a fighter in these instances, and we'll make it work. But there's been moments of I'm done. I feel like a fraud. I feel like a failure. But the truth is, and I've always said this when it comes to the garden, because I know everyone has experienced this in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through a hard freeze or a flood or a storm or whatever. We've all lost plants, especially ones that we've worked really hard to grow or we've planned. So like I said, I almost didn't make this video, but then there was this part of me that said, people need to hear this. They need to know that even someone who knows what they're doing either makes mistakes or there's just things you can't control for. I planned all this. I knew there were going to be low temperatures. I knew the plants that I put out here would be able to handle it. But as I've kind of thought back through it over the last few days, I think it was just the combination of the flood, of all the hard rains and winds that we had, and then the freeze. And there is a point to what I'm about to say, so stick with me. They just weren't ready. They just weren't ready for that struggle yet. Now, had those plants been seeded directly in the ground and grown in the ground out here, they would have absolutely tolerated that weather because they would have built up their muscles and their capacity to handle the elements. So that is one of the reasons I love gardening. One of the many reasons I love gardening is because to me, it reflects life. And even in this instance of losing half of my garden and all the things that I worked really hard for, I could give up. I could just say, it's not worth it. Whatever. I'll just focus on the plants that I have inside still that still need to come out in the garden. Or I could look at this as an opportunity to grow, to become a better gardener, to become a better person, to overcome the situation with some sort of positivity. Because the truth is, you guys, if we don't struggle in life, we all hate struggle for the most part. Though there are those people that have nailed the mindset of struggle equals strength. But for the most part, human nature, we resist struggle. If the thought of going through hard times is scary to us, we don't want to go through hard times. If you're like me, I've spent a lot of my life just fearing the hard times. But the truth of the matter is, that's where we grow as a person. That's where our roots dig deep, and that's where we become stronger. And it's so interesting to me because plants are the same way. If you've ever grown plants inside, one of the things that they recommend is putting a fan on them so that they're being moved from the air from the fan, or daily taking your hands and rubbing them on top of the plants. And the reason for that is because that resistance that they're feeling from the air, from the fan, or from your hand is causing them to strengthen. Their roots will strengthen, their stems will strengthen because they're being challenged. Just like our bodies in the gym, we're not going to grow stronger unless we're challenging our bodies, we're challenging our muscles. We will remain weak, or we will remain the same unless there is a challenge, unless there is a struggle. I used to be an avid exerciser from a really young age. I was a weightlifter, was actually training for a weightlifting competition that I never ended up doing. So I know the science behind that. You have to challenge your body to grow stronger. That goes with plants. They have to be challenged to grow stronger, which again is why I think I lost all these plants that were supposed to handle that weather. They weren't ready. They had not been challenged enough inside my house to handle the elements out here. Even though they said, even the seed packets and the experts said that they would. And in the same way, as a person, as a gardener, if we're not challenging ourselves, if we're not pushing through struggle and hard times, we're not going to grow. We're not going to grow physically. We're not going to grow spiritually. We're not going to grow mentally. And as much as we hate that challenge, as much as we hate that discomfort that comes with hard times, that's where the growth is. That's where we become a better person, a smarter person, a more knowledgeable person, a wiser person. And we should all want that. As much as we like the comfort of what we know, as much as we avoid discomfort and we want to be happy, we think that happiness comes with comfort, right? And there is a joy in comfort, right? Comforting foods, comforting environments. That is a blessing. But if we avoid discomfort, your life will not be rich. You will not bear fruit. If these plants don't experience struggle, they're going to die in the garden. They're not going to thrive. They're going to be your weaker plants that don't produce the harvest that you want. Even by the pruning and the tending that you do to plants, I'm thinking specifically of like tomato plants and the pruning that I do through them throughout the year, that causes them to become a stronger, more fruitful plant. And the same is with us. If you read the Bible, so my faith is a huge part of who I am and how I live. And scripture in the Bible refers to gardening a lot, and the pruning and the tending that has to happen for there to be growth. We have to be pruned. We have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like if you're thinking about cutting off a stem, we don't actually have to lose our limbs, but you know what I mean? Like we have to be refined by the fire. No one likes that idea, but when you're in the refining process, you can see the beauty of it. Sometimes in the middle of it, and sometimes when you get to the other side of it. You know, when you're in the thick of it, sometimes it's really hard to see why we're going through that struggle. Sometimes you're given that inclination when you're in the middle of it and you see it and you're given that, like, I know this is for good. It hurts, it's uncomfortable, but I know it's for good. And you have that long view, right? You have the long view of what's going on. And then sometimes it takes you getting on the other side of the struggle to see what you gained. I'm not going to dig into all the times in my life that I have gone through huge struggles and then come out on the other side of it with just a whole new perspective of life, a much stronger person. And while I wouldn't want to go through those trials again, I'm so glad that I went through them, because I wouldn't be who I am now without that struggle, right? So my challenge to you as a person, and specifically as a gardener, is don't let those hard times and those struggles stop you. So I came out here yesterday and I decided, you know what? Even though I've got areas in my garden that are not cooperating, this corner over here that gave me struggles last year that I really tried to kill the weeds out so I could plant there, it's not ready. It's not ready to plant in. And so I'm having to cover up a good portion of my garden back there again to try to kill out these weeds, and I'm not going to be able to plant there like I had planned. So I took the plants that I had planned on planting there and I put them where the crops that have died or look like they're about to die were. So I'm taking that space that I had used for those other plants, like my broccolis and my cauliflowers, and I've planted in the things that I had not yet planted that I lost my space for over here. So I've moved them, and now thinking about it, I think it's actually going to work out great, because they're interplanted with some plants that they grow really well with. I'll be harvesting them before the other ones mature. And truthfully, I'm going to restart all this cauliflower and broccoli in July. I'm going to restart it in my house, and then I'm going to plant it out here in August when these plants are going to be done. So it actually works out perfectly. And I do know that here in Southwest Michigan, plants like broccoli and cauliflower, radishes, cilantro, spinach, arugula, those things actually do way better in the fall garden than they do in the cool season garden. Now, I've mentioned in prior videos that I had given these plants a really good head start in my house in hopes of trying to get them through the spring without bolting. So I've lost almost all those plants, and I thankfully have enough seed left inside that I'm just going to restart them again. I'm going to try again. And moving forward, I probably will not plant these kinds of cauliflowers and broccolis in the spring. I will probably just wait for the fall. So lesson learned, right? I can grow, I can move on from this. And I'm just planting beets over here because I lost my space for beets over there. I'm interplanting carrots and onions and lettuces, and all those things will get shade from the plants around them. My dill has survived, but I've gone ahead and actually started more dill inside, and I'm going to start some more of my Dara or Queen Anne's lace out here. It has plenty of time to grow. I'm going to replant my mustards. Mustards can grow in 30 to 40 days. So it's early April right now. That means they'll be ready to start being harvested by early May before the temperatures really get too high. So I'm not going to plant as many as I had started inside, but I'm just going to restart them, and I'm going to put them in a place where they can get some shade or shade some other plants next to it. All my kales, I still have a ton of kale and chard that I did not bring out here because they were too small. Praise the Lord. So I can bring those out in the next couple of weeks, and when I know the temperatures are going to be fine. Swiss chard, I can start from seed and it'll grow great through the summer. So all is not lost. Even though it feels like it is, even though I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort, and a lot of space in my house growing all these plants, all is not lost. And the challenge and the frustration that comes along with this is just giving me the opportunity to grow as a gardener and as a person. So I hope this encourages you. You're gonna have failure in the garden. And I don't even like to use the word failure because I really believe that any fail in the garden is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow and gain some wisdom and knowledge in the skill. And that's with life. It's with anything in life. If you look at a failure as an opportunity to overcome, you will grow as a person. You will become wiser, stronger. You'll have more perspective. All the things that we should want in life. Comfort is great, but continual comfort, it's going to get you nowhere. Lean into the struggle, lean into the hard times, lean into those frustrating and overcome. Be resourceful. Reach out to others around you for advice, for help. I will throw this one last tidbit in and then I'm going to close this video. This year with the garden, we are on the tightest budget that we've ever been in, probably since I've ever gardened. Like, we have very little overhead for anything. So I had saved a ton of seed from last year and I've been able to grow most of this garden from seeds I already had, or from seed packets that weren't fully empty yet. Some seed potatoes, although I ended up using my own seed potatoes and returning a bunch of the potatoes that I had bought. I'm growing my own sweet potato starts inside. I'm using resources from my property to build my garden beds. I didn't need to buy soil. I didn't need to buy mulch. I had free wood chip drops on my property. We've used leaves and manure and straw and hay and things that we can get either for free on our property or for free, off marketplace. So again, I could have given up saying, I don't have any money to spend on my garden this year. What can I do? But because I love gardening so much, I was not going to let our budget be the reason that I didn't garden and produce food for our family. This is the food for our family here over the next year. Everything that I grow in this garden, this is going to feed us over the next year for the most part. There will be some supplements from the grocery store, but the goal is to grow most of our food here. So am I going to let money stop me from doing that? No, I had to have a moment of freak out. And then I had to say, nope, we're going to do this, dig my heels in and become resourceful. So that's the message I'm sending you. Just don't give up. Don't be overwhelmed by the emotion of failure or limitations or limited resources. If I can do this on the budget that we're doing it on this year, so can you. You can do it. I promise you. I've had limited budgets in the past. This one's been our tightest, but I've done gardening on limited budgets in the past. There are so many ways to do it. So many ways. I promise you. Just start looking, pray. Prayer is always good for insight and perspective and just the right mindset. So yeah, I will keep you updated on what ends up making it out here, definitely what we lose, and just how I'm going to overcome this situation and this loss, making lemons into lemonade. So if you watched through the end of this, thank you. I hope it's encouraging to you. Share it if you know someone that needs it. And I will keep you updated on what happens out here in the garden. Okay, thank you for watching. Be encouraged today. All right.